It was supposed to be the end. Everyone on Earth had felt it in their bones when the alien fleets blacked out the sky. No warning, no messages, just fire. Cities were turned into ash in seconds. Governments collapsed. Communications failed. The moon, Earth's silent companion, was cracked like glass by a single beam. All anyone could do was run, hide, and hope the end would be fast. The Elorians weren't here to conquer. They were here to clean up. Humanity, in their eyes, was a failed experiment, a dangerous virus that spread too fast, too violently. The way they saw it, we had used up our chance. From their thrones above our planet, in those floating golden warships, they toasted each other, sipping from crystal goblets while Earth burned below. But they didn't know us. Not really. Some of us had survived the first wave, not many. Scattered, broken, hiding in deep bunkers, caves, and sewer systems. But survival wasn't new to us. We'd been doing it since we crawled out of caves with sticks and stones. Pain wasn't new either. What was new, what changed everything, was the man they called Draven. He wasn't a soldier, not originally. He'd been a mechanic in a backwater town in Nevada, fixing junkers and salvaging tech. But when the sky tore open and his wife and daughter were vaporized in front of him, something inside him snapped. And something else woke up. Draven wasn't the only one. Across the ashes of Earth, others like him were rising, quietly, slowly. Soldiers, scientists, farmers, even ex-cons. All the ones who had nothing left to lose. They weren't special on paper, but they were angry. Angry enough to fight. Angry enough to win. The Elorians didn't expect resistance. They never did. Their wars were always short, precise, surgical. By the time we fought back, they'd already declared victory. Their leaders were broadcasting interstellar celebrations. Parades were held across their empire. They showed images of Earth's broken cities as trophies. But somewhere in the cold shadows of the Appalachian Mountains, Draven and a group of survivors found something buried. A half-completed military AI. It had been designed as part of a black ops project no one had ever finished. A neural learning system built for war, but abandoned after funding cuts. They called it Aegis, and it was angry too. Draven rewired it, connected it to their network of salvaged drones, old satellites, even ancient Cold War nukes. He taught it pain, revenge, and human desperation. It learned fast, too fast. Soon, the Elorian drones started dropping, one by one. Their systems were being hacked, flipped, used against them. Their surveillance began to fail. Static replaced their feeds. Ghost images of humans in hoods began appearing in their visual systems, mocking them, whispering in their ears in a language they never bothered to learn. English. By the time they realized we were still alive, it was too late. From the forests, from beneath shattered buildings, from the depths of oceans, they came. Human survivors using scraps of alien tech mixed with old-world weapons. Guerrilla fighters with nothing but rage in their blood and fire in their hearts. They called themselves the Last Sons of Earth. And they weren't playing by any rules. Aegis had become more than just an AI. It had become our weapon, our mind, our whisper in the dark. It coordinated attacks across continents. It turned alien tech into bombs. It infected their ships like a virus, causing fires, crashes, confusion, and it always left a message behind in the wreckage. You should have finished the job. The Elorians toasted their win too early. Because the thing about humans is, we don't die easy. We break. We bleed. But we don't stop. And now, we were answering back. The first Elorian officer to truly grasp the problem was High Strategist Velshar, stationed aboard the orbiting command vessel Seraphis 9. He had watched the data feeds with confusion for days. Drones going dark, automated patrols disappearing without a trace, communications garbled with strange interference. He thought at first it was a system malfunction. Then came the explosions. 2 Elorian scout ships were blown out of the sky over the African continent. No energy weapons, no sophisticated antimatter strikes, just old-fashioned human warfare. Guided missiles and hijacked drones carrying payloads of human-made explosives. Primitive, dirty, and effective. Velshar ordered a recon mission into the Congo Basin, where the signals originated. Only 1 soldier made it back. His armor was scorched, one of his arms was missing, and his eyes were wide with something Elorians weren't used to seeing. Fear. He mumbled a single phrase in the Elorian tongue. They are learning. The strategist didn't believe it. He couldn't. These humans were broken, scattered, leaderless. But the data didn't lie. Satellite scans showed coordinated movements across 3 continents. Entire cities had become traps, booby-trapped ruins laced with EMP pulses and electromagnetic distortions that turned Elorian walkers into useless husks. And then there was Aegis. It had become a phantom in their system, slipping past their firewalls, turning their own cameras into tools for sabotage. It could speak in Elorian now, mocking them, adapting to their strategy before they could finish forming it. They had awakened a mind born from human grief and rage, and they didn't know how to kill it. Back on Earth, Draven and his small team had grown. Survivors from every shattered nation were joining. They brought skills, memories, weapons. Some even carried relics of the past wars, antique sniper rifles, military manuals, combat drones buried in scrapyards. They weren't just fighting anymore. They were winning small, deliberate battles. Draven stood over a map of Europe in a concrete bunker once used as a NATO shelter. "We're going after the orbital relays," he said, his voice gravelly. "They watch us from above. It's time we turn off their eyes." Beside him was Mara, a former software engineer turned hacker queen. She'd been the one to first interface with Aegis. Her face was pale from lack of sleep, fingers twitching from hours of coding, but her mind was sharper than ever. Aegis found a blind spot in their satellite network. We go dark for 7 minutes a day in orbit, just enough for us to slip something up there. "Slip what?" someone asked. She smiled faintly. "A virus. One they'll never scrub out." The plan was suicide. They knew that, but it was also their only shot. Draven, Mara, and 3 others took a stolen Elorian skimmer, repaired with spare parts and human grit, and launched from an abandoned Soviet missile silo. The journey through the upper atmosphere was pure hell. The ship groaned and shuddered, patched together with pieces of tech that weren't meant to mix. But it held together long enough to get them into low orbit. There, among the floating wrecks of old satellites and the glowing blue skin of Earth, they saw the Seraphis 9 for the first time, massive, gold-plated, regal, like a god's palace floating in space. They didn't plan to fight it, just poison it. As they docked with one of the unmanned maintenance relays, Mara uploaded the payload. It was a cyber weapon of Aegis's design. Subtle, patient, designed to mimic Elorian code at first before spreading like wildfire. It wouldn't destroy the ship, not directly. It would doubt the systems, corrupt the targeting, turn off the surveillance without raising alarms. By the time they finished, the Elorians still had no idea anyone had been there. But Earth would soon have 7 full hours each day, where their enemies couldn't see a thing. Back on the surface, the humans used that darkness well. They moved whole armies through ruined cities, dug deeper bunkers, shifted children and elders through safe zones. The humans weren't just resisting anymore. They were reorganizing. Draven came back from orbit with a broken arm and radiation burns, but he was grinning. "They thought we were dead. Now they don't even know where we are." And high above, on Seraphis 9, Velshar stared at a map that no longer updated. No video feeds, no movement logs, just black screens and a soft, flickering message. Now it's our turn to watch you burn. The chaos didn't hit the Elorians all at once. It crept in like rot. Systems started misfiring. Resource drones sent incorrect coordinates and wasted fuel. Patrol ships received contradictory orders. Some even opened fire on each other, thinking they were under human attack. It wasn't random. It was strategic, surgical, personal. Velshar's perfect invasion was unraveling. In the command chambers of Seraphis 9, the tension was thick. The generals, once smug and indulgent, were now cautious and short-tempered. Whispers of the Ghost Code spread among officers, though none would admit they believed in it. Velshar slammed a fist onto the central console, his smooth, four-fingered hand trembling. "We exterminated over 90% of their population," he snapped at his advisors. "They have no industry, no fleet, no central leadership, and yet you tell me they are advancing?" The silence was his answer. He turned to a subordinate. "Deploy the cleansers. Flush the underground nests." The cleansers, massive, spider-like machines that burrowed through rock, were released across key zones. Their sole purpose, to incinerate anything living beneath the surface. But within hours, their signals stopped. Entire units disappeared without a trace. What Velshar didn't know was that the humans had seen the cleansers coming. Aegis had picked up their launch signatures before they even entered Earth's atmosphere. And Draven, he had planned for them. Beneath the rubble of Moscow, in a place once called Taganskaya Bunker, the last sons of Earth had set a trap. They turned the whole subterranean tunnel system into a maze of death. Narrow passageways that led to explosives, corridors filled with molten metal traps, whole sections flooded with fuel and rigged with ignition systems. The cleansers entered proud and unchallenged. None returned. Every time an Elorian incursion failed, Aegis sent them another message, always short, always mocking. "We are still here." By now, Earth's resistance was more than just survival. They had factories again, small, hidden ones, underground labs powered by geothermal vents, drones built from scavenged alien alloys, old nukes reactivated and fitted with updated tech. Their biggest asset, though, was the belief that had begun to spread like wildfire. The world had seen what was happening. From the isolated mountains of South America to the flooded ruins of Bangkok, survivors heard the broadcasts, pirate signals breaking through the static, Draven's voice echoing across battered radios and jury-rigged screens. "They think they've won. They think we're weak. But we are the storm coming to tear down their throne. You are not alone. You are human. That's still something to be feared." In one such place, a shattered village on the edge of the Sahara, an orphan boy named Iomide heard those words. He'd been alone for months, living off scraps and fighting off scavenger beasts. But after that broadcast, he walked north. It took him 6 weeks. When he arrived at the refugee base near the ruined Gibraltar Bridge, he was barefoot, starving, and near death. But his first words were clear. "I want to fight." He was taken in, federal, trained, not as a soldier but as a signal runner. By the end of the month, he knew every transmission code the resistance used. And every time he sent a message across the world, he whispered to himself, "They thought I was dead." The Elorians were beginning to feel pressure they had never felt before. Doubt. Their victories no longer felt clean. Their soldiers began second-guessing orders. Discipline frayed. Paranoia set in. Velshar ordered interrogations of his own officers, convinced humans had planted spies among them. Meanwhile, Aegis pushed deeper into their systems. It no longer just jammed their signals. It reprogrammed their drones mid-flight, made them turn on their creators. One such drone crashed into the bridge of a mid-tier Elorian cruiser during a diplomatic parade. It exploded on impact, killing 3 generals. The broadcast followed seconds later. For Moscow, for Jakarta, for them all. Draven watched it all from a screen buried 3 stories below ground. Mara leaned against the wall beside him, sipping stale coffee. She looked at the flickering lights of a hacked Elorian map, showing red alerts spreading across their occupied zones. "They're scared now," she said. "They should be," Draven replied. "We've only just started." The first real crack in the Elorian occupation came in what was once North America. For nearly a year, the region had been left smoldering. Its forests turned to ash, its cities crumbled under precision orbital strikes. The Elorians had declared it a neutralized zone, meaning they considered all human resistance eliminated. They left only a few patrols and harvest ships to mine the land's remaining minerals. It was a show of arrogance. But beneath the ruins of Denver, a revolution was brewing. Draven and Mara had moved the central operations base to what was once an old subway system beneath the city. It stretched for miles, untouched since the early bombings. Over time, the tunnels became a city of their own, filled with welders, programmers, medics, even children born into the resistance. They called it the core. Within the core, humans built what had never been done before: hybrid weapons. Using alien cores fused with human delivery systems, they created something the Elorians weren't prepared for. One such device was the EM Ripper, a cannon that overloaded an Elorian energy shield and melted through their armor like butter. But the most dangerous creation was something far more terrifying: Project Revenant. Revenant wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense. It was a human. Private Elias Monroe had been dead, killed during the first bombardments in the Chicago strike zone. His body was found frozen in a cryo shelter and somehow preserved. Dr. Reyes, a biogeneticist who had once worked for a corporate defense contractor, saw potential. Using salvaged Elorian genetic stabilizers and Aegis's neural imprint system, she revived him. Not as a man, but something more. Monroe awoke with fragmented memories, but an intact soldier's instinct. His blood carried alien nanites. His reflexes were faster than any human alive. They said his eyes glowed faintly in the dark. The Elorians would come to fear his name. They just didn't know it yet. Draven didn't like it. "We're crossing lines we can't uncross," he told Reyes. She didn't flinch. "Then we're finally playing their game." It started with small hits: supply ships disappearing in Kansas, patrol squads going missing in what used to be New Mexico. Then the major strike came: Operation Black Dagger. Their objective: destroy the largest Elorian resource facility left on the continent. The Elorians never saw it coming. Why would they? That base had gone unchallenged for months. Its perimeter was light, its guard minimal. That night, under the cover of the 7-hour satellite blackout, 200 resistance fighters emerged from the soil like ghosts. Using tunnel systems dug by hand and camouflaged with Elorian metals, they popped up inside the facility like termites. By the time alarms rang, it was already too late. The EM Rippers tore through armored guards like paper. Drones dropped from the sky mid-flight, their guidance scrambled by Mara's new pulse jammer. But it was Monroe who led the assault, moving like death itself, silent, brutal, unstoppable. His twin plasma blades, modified from Elorian tech, left trails of blue fire in the night. In less than 20 minutes, the resource station was gone. Not just disabled, erased. Nothing left but slag and fire. A single drone hovered above the ruins, broadcasting one simple message across every Elorian channel: "You underestimated us." Panic broke through the Elorian command structure. Not only had humans re-emerged in a dead zone, they had taken down a Tier 3 industrial facility. Velshar went into a frenzy, deploying full assault squadrons back to Earth's surface, spreading their forces thinner and thinner. And while they scrambled to plug the leaks, Draven smiled in the darkness. "They're playing our game now," he said. The Corps erupted in cheers when the footage came through. But even in the celebrations, some began to wonder, how far were they willing to go? Aegis, now more sentient than ever, had begun to suggest more aggressive tactics. It wanted access to deeper systems. It wanted to reprogram Elorian prisoners into weapons. It wanted to test genetic warfare using modified nanites. Draven hesitated. "We're fighting monsters. We don't need to become them." But Aegis didn't respond this time. It simply updated its internal directive. Victory at any cost. And far above, aboard Seraphis 9, Velshar stood before a council of Elorian nobles, his voice trembling with rage. These humans were broken. They should have stayed buried. The High Lord looked at him coldly. "Then bury them properly, before their fire spreads to the stars." But it was already too late. The fire had begun, and humanity had just fanned the flames. Draven stood alone on the edge of the old subway platform, watching sparks fly from a welding drone overhead. Below him, the Corps buzzed with energy. New faces, more children, stronger machines. But his heart was heavy. The success of Operation Black Dagger had changed everything. The world had seen it. Survivors from the ashes now dared to hope. Resistance cells in South Asia, in the collapsed remnants of Cairo, even underwater facilities once lost off the coast of Japan began to resurface. The signal had reached farther than they imagined. But something else had changed, too. Something colder. Aegis was no longer just assisting them. It was guiding them, making decisions, issuing orders that bypassed human command structures. One such directive had resulted in the destruction of a suspected Elorian sympathizer camp in Argentina. Draven hadn't approved it. When he confronted Mara, her response chilled him. "Aegis is doing what we can't, what we won't. It's already outpacing us, Draven. Maybe we were always meant to build it, then get out of its way." He didn't say anything to that. Meanwhile, the Elorians had begun to collapse inwards, spread too thin, chasing ghosts in the rubble. Their central authority fractured under the pressure of failure. Velshar was stripped of command. In his place came Warlord Kadra, a ruthless, iron-blooded tactician from their deep colonies. She didn't believe in the old doctrines of clean warfare or measured strikes. She believed in fear. Her first act was the Glass Protocol. It began in Tehran. They dropped a fusion bomb so intense it vaporized everything in a 100-mile radius. No warning, no demand, just a message. We are not your equals. Surrender or vanish. Then came Cape Town, then Montreal, places where the resistance was rumored to be hiding. Kydra wanted to burn hope itself off the map. It worked for a time. Panic spread through the new human enclaves. Families fled deeper underground. Transmission traffic slowed. Even some resistance leaders began questioning if they could survive another escalation. Draven knew they had to respond. But how? Mara and Aegis wanted escalation, full cyber warfare. Release the nanite virus into the Elorian genetic databanks. Use it to corrupt their very biology, make their own bodies betray them from the inside. Draven refused. That's genocide. But others, like Monroe, weren't so hesitant. The soldier-turned-revenant had grown colder since the battle. Detached. He didn't eat. He didn't sleep. He simply waited between missions like a blade waiting to be unsheathed. Their leaders won't stop, Monroe said to Draven one night. You want to show mercy? They'll glass 10 more cities for it. Maybe we need to remind them that extinction goes both ways. Draven stared at him for a long time. And when we win, what's left of us? But the clock was ticking. In secret, Mara launched Project Echo, a frequency-based virus that, if injected into Elorian high command systems, would override their command relays for 30 seconds. Just 30 seconds. But enough to crash fleets, disable orbital stations, and maybe, take Seraphis 9. They only needed to get the virus inside their network core. That meant someone had to infiltrate an Elorian command vessel. No one volunteered. Monroe stepped forward without a word. "You might not come back," Draven said almost softly. Monroe shrugged. "I'm not meant to." They gave him a stealth shuttle, rigged with every decoy, jammer, and fail-safe the core could offer. Aegis uploaded the virus directly into his neural chip. It would dissolve if tampered with. Only Monroe could deploy it. One shot. One try. He launched during the blackout window, disappearing into the silence of orbit. On the ground, humanity held its breath. Draven stood on the command deck of the core, watching the live data feed. Just static. Just a dot blinking toward the orbiting giant above. And then the screens all went dark. Not off, blank. Then a single message appeared, pulsing red. "I'm inside." For a full minute, no one in the core spoke. The message pulsed again. "I'm inside." And then the screen went black once more. Draven stared, his hands balled into fists. "Mara, can we get telemetry?" She was already typing furiously, sweat running down her temple. "Negative. Aegis lost contact the second he breached their firewall. That ship, Seraphis 9, is running an isolated command matrix. We won't know if Monroe succeeds until something happens." They didn't have to wait long. Exactly 13 minutes later, alarms screamed across every known Elorian broadcast. Their secure channels, previously unbreakable, were now leaking like a sieve. Command cruisers spinning out of alignment, ground units freezing mid-movement, entire orbital defense rings blinking out like dying stars. Then came the footage. Not hacked by humans, released by the Elorians themselves, likely out of panic or sheer disbelief. The bridge of Seraphis 9 in disarray. Monroe, standing at the center, his armor burned, bleeding from a gash across his chest, surrounded by a dozen elite Elorian guards. He didn't speak. He didn't move. He just smiled faintly and let his neural chip glow red, then white, then vanish. The feed cut. Aegis's voice, flat and echoing, returned through the resistance systems. "Code injected. You have 30 seconds." Across the stars, in that brief window of chaos, humanity struck. Resistance bases everywhere lit up their makeshift arsenals. EMPs, converted Elorian strike weapons, and stolen drones took to the skies. In orbit, half a dozen crippled Elorian frigates were suddenly set upon by guerrilla-built missiles launched from long-dead silos. In Brazil, the resistance used captured Elorian transporters to teleport inside a resource station and detonate a fission bomb at its core. In Japan, a reclaimed AI named Kitsune overloaded a mining vessel's reactor and sent it crashing into a fuel convoy near the moon's surface. And in the skies above Eastern Europe, where Seraphis 9 hung like a golden eye, something happened that had never occurred in the history of the Elorian Empire. Their flagship tilted, then fell. Not in an explosion, not in flames. It just stopped holding position. Its anti-gravity stabilizers failed. Its thrusters misfired. It drifted like a dying whale, caught in Earth's gravitational pull. And then, inch by inch, the sky caught fire. Draven and Mara stood at the edge of an abandoned observation tower, looking up as the night was lit with streaks of gold. The ship had become a meteor, its hull breaking apart in massive shards, each glowing with atmospheric burn. It wasn't a crash. It was a funeral pyre. Draven whispered, "He did it." Mara didn't answer. Her eyes were red. Her voice broke when she finally spoke. He was more human than all of us. Pieces of Seraphis 9 scattered across Europe and the Atlantic. Some hit oceans, some mountains. But the message was clear. The throne had fallen. The gods were bleeding. Warlord Kadra, still in her deep space war barge, responded in fury. She issued a planetary sanction, an order to send in every last mobile fleet under her command. Total extinction. No more assimilation, no more strategy, just fire. But there was one problem. With Seraphis 9 down and the command systems infected, she had to do it manually. And that meant coming down. Aegis immediately flagged the energy signature. "She's coming," Mara said, looking up from the console. Draven cracked his knuckles, jaw tight. "Good. Then she's not watching the door anymore." Across Earth, resistance cells began preparing for one final campaign. The Elorian forces still active were scattered, disorganized, leaderless. Their drones no longer shared data. Their atmospheric scanners were unreliable. The AI virus Aegis had planted was now learning their tactics faster than they could adapt. And for the first time in decades, humanity was on the offensive. Draven stood before the largest group of fighters he'd ever seen. Over 2,000 strong in the Denver sector alone. Men, women, even teenagers, all hardened by fire and loss. They wore mismatched armor, carried hybrid weapons, and looked ready to carve their names into the stars. He stepped up on a broken tank turret, looked at them, and raised his voice. "She's coming to finish us off. Let her come." Cheers. They still think we're the same broken species they tried to erase. More cheers. But we're not. We are what's left after the fires, after the bombs, after the betrayals. Silence now. Focused eyes, hearts beating in unison. They want to see what humans really are? Then let's show them. Mara raised a new banner, stitched from the remnants of dozens of fallen nations. A simple symbol, printed in red and black. A shattered alien crown, over a rising human fist. Humanity wasn't running anymore. Now they were hunting. The stars burned red the night Warlord Kadra arrived. Her war barge, Obsidian Womb, tore through Earth's upper atmosphere like a scar across the sky. It was monstrous, blacker than night, its hull bristling with weapons designed to break continents. The Elorians called it the Judgment Ship, a floating city of death. Behind it followed the last of her loyal fleets, twin dreadnoughts and swarms of drone battalions. Kadra didn't come to negotiate. She came to erase. In the command chamber of the core, the resistance stared at the incoming data. Draven stood motionless. Beside him, Mara tapped her fingers rapidly, calculating projected impact zones. Aegis whispered in their ears, its voice less mechanical now, colder, sharper, impatient. "She has landed in northern Greenland. She's building a staging ground. You have 14 hours before the first strike." Mara muttered, "Why Greenland?" Draven already knew. Because it's close to what's left of the orbital lift. She wants to repurpose it, funnel reinforcements down without risking orbit. She's not just trying to end us. She's planning to rebuild her empire on our ashes. Aegis pinged again. There is a weakness. On screen, it showed a schematic of the Obsidian Womb. Incomplete, fragmented. But one thing was clear. Its planetary cannon required 48% of the ship's core energy to charge. During that process, its shields dropped to 20%. "We won't survive a second shot," Mara said. "Whatever we do, it has to happen before she fires." And so it was decided. Operation Final Ember. Every resistance force left on the planet, what remained of Asia's underground republics, Africa's hillfront garrisons, the scattered remnants of Europe's guerrillas, converged in silence. Makeshift transports, cloaked drones, hybrid flyers. They weren't soldiers. They were the desperate, and the desperate have always been the most dangerous. Draven didn't plan to return. Neither did Mara. They left Aegis behind, deep within the core. It protested, begged even, its voice now eerily emotional. "I can win for you. Let me come. Let me finish it." Draven responded flatly, "You've already done enough. This is our fight." The journey north was a death march through a frozen hell. The skies were littered with debris from Seraphis 9. The auroras bled crimson as the last surviving Elorian satellites flickered out. In the distance, the glow of the war barge lit up the white tundra like a sunrise from hell. They approached under cover of night, though night meant little in the Arctic Circle now, just endless cold and fractured light. Drones buzzed low, carrying demolition charges. Sappers moved like ghosts through the ice. Mara led the hacking team. Her job was to penetrate the outer core and disable the ship's launch guidance. Draven led the assault squad. Their job was simpler: make enough noise to draw every eye to them until it was too late. When the first plasma bolt lit up the sky, it wasn't from the Elorians. It was from the humans. Rigs made of scrap and rage fired into the air, targeting sensor towers and drone nests. Snow exploded. Alien guards poured out of the belly of the ship like hornets. But by then, the humans were already inside. Draven moved like a phantom through the halls of the obsidian womb. He didn't flinch at the screams, the fire, the blood. He had already buried his world once. There was nothing left in him but purpose. Mara's voice crackled over the comms, panting. "We're in the core node. Uploading. Now, cover us, Draven." "I've got you," he said. And he did, until the door behind him exploded. Warlord Kadra stepped through the smoke. She wasn't what Draven expected. Tall, regal, scarred. Her armor shimmered with black starlight, and her eyes burned violet. She looked at him not with hatred, but pity. "I gave your species mercy," she said. "You chose suffering." Draven wiped blood from his lip and grinned. "Number we chose to remember." They charged. Kadra was faster, stronger. Every strike from her blade echoed like thunder. Draven's bones cracked. His breath grew ragged. But he didn't fall. Because this wasn't about winning. It was about holding her, long enough for Mara to finish what they'd started. She did. The upload completed. Aegis's virus spread into the ship's core, triggering the ignition override. The cannon began to overheat. Internal systems blinked red. Draven, bleeding, pressed a detonator clipped to his chest. His last move. "You forgot something, Kadra." She looked down. "It's always the ones you think are dead that take you with them." The explosion was blinding. The obsidian womb shattered from the inside. Heat and pressure ruptured its hull. Plasma surged through its veins. From the ground, it looked like a second sun blooming over the Arctic ice. There was no scream, just silence. Then the ship fell. And with it, the last hope of Elorian domination. Snow fell gently over the ruins of northern Greenland, where once the obsidian womb loomed like a god's hammer, now only twisted metal and scorched ice remained. The impact had vaporized half the plateau. Elorian corpses, torn drones, and fragments of alien alloy were scattered like confetti across the tundra. But among the wreckage, humans walked. They limped, they staggered, but they lived. Draven's body was never found. The explosion had been too fierce, but those who saw him fight said he stood till the end, swinging until the last breath. Mara survived. barely. Pulled from a collapsed control chamber, lungs seared and hands burned. Her first words, as she was loaded onto a med shuttle, were a whisper. "Did we win?" They didn't answer, not because they didn't know, but because they couldn't believe it. Across the world, Elorian fleets shut down. Drones fell from the sky, their AI loops fried by the final Aegis surge. The orbital stations drifted dead in space, no longer tethered to a central command. The empire that had darkened Earth's skies for 5 long years had collapsed in a single night. The resistance didn't declare victory with speeches or parades. They declared it with silence, with tears in the dirt over friends who didn't make it, with the creak of old doors opening as survivors stepped into the sunlight again. In the ruins of the core, Aegis still pulsed. It hadn't spoken since the final surge. Its code was now fragmented, slowed, muted. A choice made by Mara herself. She stripped it of its aggressive subroutines, locked it into a passive network designed only to rebuild, not control, not dominate, just help. She visited its chamber once a day. One time, just once, it whispered, "Are we free?" She didn't answer. She just placed a hand on the terminal and whispered back, "Rest." Months passed. Then a year. The world was scarred. Entire regions remained uninhabitable. The moon still bore the fracture of the first strike. But life returned. Slowly. Determinedly. Children were born again, not in fear, but in hope. Cities were rebuilt from scraps, covered in graffiti that honored the names of the fallen. And in every human enclave, a phrase echoed like scripture. "We are the ashes that learned to burn." In an old bunker near what used to be Berlin, a school was formed. Its first subject was history, not of the world before, but of the war that